Welcome you here. Over the next day and a half, this conference is for you. This conference is for you to learn something, to grow, to meet someone you don't know, to do all the things that an entrepreneur is supposed to do. So make sure that you get something out of this conference. Make sure you're listening intently to the things that are said, and make sure that you're interacting in the workshops tomorrow. And we're really looking forward to you getting something out of this today. Before I start, this conference wouldn't happen if it weren't for our sponsors. And so I want to just mention them right now. Our conference hosts are Tech 2020 and Launch Tennessee. And our sustaining member is Y12. Platinum sponsors, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Cornerstone Foundation, and Oak Ridge Associated Universities. Our gold sponsors this year are Pilot Corporation, Meritus Ventures, the University of Tennessee Pro MBA program, and Pathway Lending. And our silver sponsors are PetSafe, Crowett of Oak Ridge, Wolf McLean and PYA. And then our bronze sponsors are ProToServe, Parker Business Consulting, NAI Knoxville, Stoller, LBMC, Synergy, and Technology Ventures Corporation. So thank you to you sponsors. This would not happen without you. We thank you for your support of this conference. I'm going to turn it over now to Eddie Manis, and Eddie is going to come on behalf of our Mayor of Knoxville, Mayor Rogero, and welcome you to the conference.
Thank you, John. On behalf of Mayor Rogero, I'm delighted to be here. She is actually in New York representing the city at a conference. She's not on vacation. I need to make that very clear. She would be here, but she is delighted that we're able to be here and welcome you to Knoxville. For those of you, I guess, are there people visiting Knoxville? I should know that, but are all of these local? Everybody's local. Well, that makes it even better. It's good to be here. It's been almost a year since I left the daily operations of my own company and entered public service. Actually, we're coming up on, I can almost give you the exact day. The inauguration was December 19th, and that's when I officially took the position of Chief Operations Officer and Deputy to the Mayor. But I started working without compensation for the city of Knoxville in mid-November, so we're approaching a year now that I've been there. To be honest, I'm still trying to figure out which one is more challenging, my private sector job or my public sector job. I can tell you the joke about government employees that they go to lunch at noon and come back at 2:30 and tell everyone they had only a 30-minute lunch. That is not true. At least in city government, that is not true. I work, and I'm proud to be associated with, a hard-working group of men and women who really give the taxpayer a return on their investment. One of the reasons I came on board with Mayor Rogero is that she wanted an administration that was focused on making Knoxville a business-friendly place where concerns of the business sector are heard and addressed. Throughout the campaign, we heard that she wasn't from the business community, and she may not have been a business owner or associated with business, but she knows to listen to people who are in business, and she does that very well. And that really appealed to me as an entrepreneur when she approached me and asked me if I would take this position. One of the reasons why I chose to take this position is because she listens to people who make it happen every day, and she is business friendly. It appealed to me as an entrepreneur because I know the dedication and hard work, energy, and discipline it takes to have your own business and be an entrepreneur. Not to mention the competitive drive, and having to deal with municipal red tape is exhausting. Mine is not a typical entrepreneur story, and I want to take just a second because I can do this as an entrepreneur and as one of you, even though I am in the dry cleaning business. I want to take just a second to tell you a little bit about my story. It's not a typical entrepreneur story because I don't think I ever really set out to be an entrepreneur. As I was thinking over the weekend, do you set out to be an entrepreneur? Or do you set out to be in business? And so I really struggled with that. Do you start from the ground up as an entrepreneur, or are you a business owner? I just knew that starting a small business, I wanted to do the best that I could possibly do. Many of you, as I've said, know that I'm the founder and owner of Prestige Cleaners. Prestige started in 1985 with 3 employees in 1 location. And today we have, I think, 12 locations, 148 employees, and we have offices in Knoxville and in Nashville now. And I want to take a minute just to share a little bit of my background with you. I worked my way through school, taking classes on nights and weekends as a delivery driver for a company that was in the dry cleaning and laundry industry. Never really set out to be in the dry cleaning business. It was just kind of a means for me to further my education and my career. One day I saw a classified ad that was dry cleaning equipment, used dry cleaning equipment for sale, and the phone number was 584, and that's kind of the market that I'd been servicing. So it was on a Sunday afternoon. I called. There's a gentleman answered the phone, and he basically talked me into buying this equipment. The equipment was 30 years old. I was naive and young. I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I could fail. And so I bought the equipment, installed it, had a boat and car, sold the boat and the car, and bought the equipment. And so the rest is history. Like I said, I didn't know enough about business to know that I could fail. At that time, a good dry cleaners had about 10 employees, 5 to 10 employees. I started with 3, as I said, and honestly, when I got to 120 employees, I hadn't even realized that I passed the 10-employee mark. I'm often asked, what did you think? What was your plan? And to be honest, I didn't really have a plan. I know that's not popular today, but it started, and I was fortunate I didn't have a plan. I didn't have this vision of I wanted to be Knoxville's largest dry cleaning or one of the top 10 in the country. That wasn't a plan. My plan was just to produce a good product, a quality product, and make the customers happy. During those early days, as many of you in this room can relate to, working from 5 a.m. in the morning until 10 p.m. at night. It's pretty exhausting. How many of you have ever worked that kind of schedule before? I figured I would be in good company with that. I was putting in countless hours, but growing the business at that point, triple digits. I mean, the business was growing so quickly I couldn't manage it, and I certainly couldn't manage the cash flow. And when you can't manage cash flow, you start taking shortcuts. And one of the ones I took was, I debated on whether I was going to share this or not over the weekend, but one of those that I took was deciding that not deciding, but not being able to pay sales tax and payroll taxes. That may get some eye raises in this room, but I'm just being honest. And as many of you know, when you stop paying any kind of tax, the tax man cometh. And he came. One day I was in the back working, and it was a tough day, and I was working, and customer service rep comes to me, and she says, there's somebody in the front that wants to speak to you. And so I walked up. I'll never forget this, and this has probably been 23 years ago. He slid his card across the counter, and I looked down at his card, and it said Tennessee Department of Revenue. And how I can remember this man's name, I only met him one time, and his name was Lynn Pyle. And it said, Tax Enforcement Officer. And we talked. He was a nice guy, but the words that he spoke to me still ring in my head. And they went like this: son, you got to pay your taxes. So they hung in the air, and I knew it would be a matter of weeks, if not days, before he had returned. So we had to put a plan in place. So I was fortunate to work with a very good accountant to put a plan in place to take care of all of that, payroll taxes and payroll taxes and sales tax. And I must admit today that we are current and have been for many, 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 many years on taxes. And we plan to stay that way. It's all part of those growing pains and part of the learning process. But from that point on, starting the business from the ground up, I learned every aspect of the business. I learned the sales and marketing side, the dry cleaning process, human resources, accounting. It was all on my shoulders, as it is on all of your shoulders when you're starting off as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I realized that owning a business or being an entrepreneur is unlike any other job, but it's a weighty responsibility too. I was responsible for seeing that my employees get paid, so they can have money to feed their families, and I took that responsibility very seriously. I also learned to be humble and give back to the community, which we still try to do through many philanthropic organizations that we try to support. Honor Air, Coats for the Cold, Give Haiti Hope, all of those things. And I think that's important as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, that you give back to the community that has given so much to you. Lots of times I'm asked, why do some entrepreneurs fail and others do not? What is the secret? And I don't pretend to know that answer. I used to think it was a lack of hard work. But I know now, just because an entrepreneur fails, it doesn't mean he or she did not work hard. The best I can determine is that most entrepreneurs fail for one of three reasons. They misjudge the demand for their product. They stop listening to their customer. Remember, it's not what you need, but what they need. Or they have no commitment to customer service. The customer service is one of the reasons why that Mayor O'Hara came and approached me on a Thursday evening after the election and asked me if I would participate in her administration. Customer service at Prestige Cleaners is very important. Customer service at the City of Knoxville is very important too. And we're really working hard to make sure that we give excellent customer service in the City of Knoxville. To all the taxpayers and all the businesses, it's very important that they get the level of customer service that we expect at Prestige. The taxpayer, you are our customers. And like I said, we're very in tune to making sure that budding business owners and entrepreneurs get our best customer service. At the city, we are trying to do that in a number of ways that Mayor O'Hara has implemented. And the economy is still recovering, but we try to create a climate that encourages business in Knoxville. We want Knoxville to be known as the business-friendly city. I want to share some ways in which the O'Hara administration is reaching out to businesses and entrepreneurs. One of the first things Mayor O'Hara did after her inauguration was to open up an Office of Business Support. And she did this throughout the campaign. She talked about this throughout the campaign. The successful recruitment, retention, and expansion of businesses are priorities of this administration. This office, under my command and headed by Patricia Robledo, who is with us today, has a simple assignment, and that is to help the business community. We can assist entrepreneurs to navigate city regulations, become familiar with policies and departments, improve relationships with businesses from all sectors, in essence, providing an avenue to make it easier to do business in Knoxville. This office has also published a business resource guide intended to provide general information and an overview of the processes you may have to go through to establish or expand a business in the city of Knoxville. The guide provides business basics, offers databases of organizations to get you started, and provides zoning information, shares industrial and business property inventories to help with permitting and building processes. As part of that office, we have also launched a Business Advisory Council. Members of the Business Advisory Council serve a 2-year term to ensure that a large number of representatives from the Knoxville business community have a voice and to encourage new perspectives. There are 11 members who meet quarterly. They bring issues and concerns related to doing business in Knoxville to the attention of the city administration. I attended our first meeting, it's been a few weeks ago now, and it was very insightful, very informative. It's more of a roundtable session where we get input from this Business Advisory Council as to how we truly can improve our services to the business community. In addition to the Office of Business Support, we have another project brewing. We are in the final stages. I wish we were a little further along with this, but of establishing an entrepreneur center. Some of you may have heard this. Knoxville needs to be that place where aspiring entrepreneurs can see themselves turning their ideas into reality, where they feel welcome. The drawing that you see here was developed for the Industrial Development Board by Design Innovation. The center would look something like this and would be located right in the center of downtown on Market Square. It's right beneath the Chamber of Commerce. We have to take advantage of our Chamber of Commerce, the University of Tennessee, and others in that downtown area. This would be the front door to the Entrepreneur Center and to the business community. The university has bright faculty and students, and many of them are entrepreneurs in the waiting. There should be a supportive and nurturing environment for them. and we hope this will be one of those ways to nurture the entrepreneurs. The goals of the center are to attract and nurture creative people, serve as a front door to the region's entrepreneur and small business communities, and promote diverse economic base. We want the center to encourage collaboration among individuals and organizations and initiate weekly big dog appointments. The concept is that we would develop a network of successful entrepreneurs, business people, creative people, investors, etc., who would be willing to commit possibly one day a month to be physically present in this space. Providing these kinds of initiatives and using resources to attract businesses do not come without criticism. I could almost say that anything in public life does not come without criticism. I have discovered that. That's been a huge adjustment to me coming from private to public, but it does come with criticism. Many people say that government should not give incentives to businesses or to entrepreneurs. And I'm sure if I polled, and I'm not going to do that in this room, there would be a difference of opinions whether we should give incentives to businesses to develop and grow in this community. But a lot of people say government shouldn't give incentives. They make enough money. But we believe that the right incentives can spur better business and the local economy. The city of Knoxville does use incentives such as TIFs, pilots, and grants as strategic investments for some projects, including our most recent Urban Outfitters. You may have heard about Urban Outfitters. The developers of this project have a forgivable loan through the Urban Development Action Grant. We've been criticized that the money is going to Urban Outfitters. And I try to clarify this over and over. It's not going to Urban Outfitters. It's going to Arnstein Partners, a local developer. With Urban Outfitters, enabling Urban Outfitters to come to Knoxville now, we are having, you probably have seen the announcement, now we have Anthropology that has just made an announcement they are coming here. So we do think it's important. And this is what the new studio architecture envisions near Market Square. Again, we welcome developers, businesses, entrepreneurs to make something happen in the core of the city. We can't give money to every project. We can't assist with every project, but we certainly do take into consideration the investment, the economic impact, and the viability of the business. We face similar questions about University Commons project. Publix and Walmart are coming to an area that was a brownfield. Many of you may know this site. This site has long been a challenge to develop. Cleaning up the long-standing brownfield on which it's located requires some remediation. We also need to ensure there's an ecologically friendly stormwater management system. Bottom line, if that land is to be developed, the city, with council's approval, has to provide some funds for roads and other infrastructure, which we did. Again, if we can help businesses and entrepreneurs make a home in Knoxville, our city and region will benefit. We have several partners to help us. The Innovation Valley and Knoxville Chamber, just to name a few. During the past 11 months, since Mayor O'Hara took office, they have helped the city to welcome several new businesses or expansions. Those include the first Knoxville Publix, which is at Pellissippi and North Shore, Internex's Smart Grid Labs, Legend Fitness, the first Trader Joe's in Knoxville, the first Embassy Suites, and Tupelo Honey. In regards to Tupelo Honey, this is a prime example of how we help businesses. Tupelo Honey had a really strict deadline they really need to get to. So they ran up on some issues, getting some things done. They called my office, and we helped walk them through the process and help them get to their completion date and their grand opening date on time. That's what we want to do with businesses that are moving or growing or here in Knoxville. Some of the businesses I've mentioned are big retail. I realize that I'm running out of time, so I'll try to speed along. Of course, small businesses are such a huge part of this thriving economy. Without our small businesses, people will not have money to shop at these stores or buy other services and products. So be inspired today to not give up. Keep working hard, listening to your core customers. The city of Knoxville, I can promise you, is here to help you get all the information you need and assist in any way possible. And remember, pay your taxes. Now that I'm in government, I realize just how important that is. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Abelquist. I'm the Executive Vice President at OREU. It is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce both Dr. Michael Mcintyre and Ashley Capps. Michael will be interviewing Ashley in just a few moments. Dr. Michael Mcintyre is the director of the Professional MBA program at UT. He is also a leading expert who works with companies all over the country. He appeared on Fox News, The Early Show, and National Public Radio, and has been featured in USA Today, The Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times. He's a proud Knoxville native and a proud parent of 3 teenagers who, according to Mike, thankfully take after their mother. Born and raised in Knoxville, Ashley Capps began promoting concerts and events as a hobby in 1979 while studying as an undergraduate at UT. After receiving a BA in philosophy and religious studies, he continued promoting jazz and blues concerts while working as a radio host and producer at a Knoxville radio station. In early 1991, he formed AC Entertainment to produce and promote concerts throughout the Southeast. The company has presented more than 3,500 concerts in more than 30 markets. In 2002, AC Entertainment joined forces with New Orleans-based Superfly Productions to create the Bonnaroo Music Festival in Manchester, Tennessee. Bonnaroo was voted Festival of the Year by Pollstar in February 2003, and Rolling Stone magazine recognized the first Bonnaroo as one of the, quote, 50 moments that changed the history of rock and roll. Please help me to welcome Ashley Capps, a true visionary and entrepreneur.
Choose the side. Pick your sides. Are we on? We're on. After you, sir. How's everybody? Good. Good.
Is my mic up? Yeah, it is.
You up? You up? That's a little wave back there. Nice, Grady. Good. We got some of that. Ellen Colonel wave. Good, good. For those of you who couldn't follow the instructions to wear jeans today, we'll have a little talk afterwards about relaxing a little bit.
I did my part.
You did your part. Ashley and I dressed up and put shoes on. And we want to start off by saying audience questions, audience participation is great. So you get an idea, just shout something at us. Okay? You can be formal if you want and step up to the mic, or you can just scream from your seats. Does that work for everybody? Cool. Eddie, it's very exciting what all the stuff the city's doing for entrepreneurs. It's very cool. Any other preliminary comments? I'll say, I know a lot of folks in the audience. I know a lot of your stories, some good stories out there, and I'm going to offend you right off the bat and just tell you that Ashley's got the coolest entrepreneurship success story in Knoxville. I'm going to go out on a limb. I could probably spread that out. He's got a great story. He is the founder and president of AC Entertainment. His company does business all over the country, but locally you'd know AC Entertainment because they manage the Tennessee Theater and the Bijou Theater, and they were responsible for the Hot Summer Nights and Sundown in the City events, and then probably most famously they are responsible for the monstrously successful Bonnaroo Festival in Manchester, Tennessee. Am I getting the location straight? So I think this is the coolest thing. So, musician from way back, you were the saxophone player in Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band?
Nobody's going to accuse me of being a musician, really, although I did play saxophone, more like in the Shenandoah elementary school marching band.
Okay,
that was probably the high point.
I thought you were going to say Shenandoah Old Folks Home, which would have been equally as impressive.
That's still to come.
You got to work your way up to that. Fountain City native?
Yes. Grew up in Fountain City when it was Fountain City, Tennessee, not Knoxville. So.
And then University of Tennessee, undergrad major in religious studies and philosophy.
That's correct.
Okay, so as a business school professor, I got to ask you what the hell you were thinking with that major. I just, you know.
Okay.
It's an obvious question.
Well, that's a good question. Nobody's ever quite put it that way.
That's just the beginning.
I don't know if I was thinking this at the time, but in retrospect, I'm really glad that that was my major. And the reason being is, you know, I think I went to school to get an education and a broad-based education, you know, not to be trained for a profession, if you will, which I have total respect for, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I had this, you know, I wanted to know about history. I wanted to know, you know, about the great ideas of our civilizations, and I was just drawn to explore these different things you know, that were offered at the university. I met some extraordinary professors, and you know, it's still something that provides, I think, a really, really strong foundation for business. You know, just to push that point a little bit, you know, there's a really interesting study recently from Vanderbilt University about liberal arts students, but actually arts majors in particular, that they have a higher level of problem solving and critical thinking skills than students in any other discipline in the university, including the sciences. You know, which I thought was a very interesting finding. And then in delving into it, when you think about the processes that people have to go through to, you know, learn instruments and learn various techniques, I think there's a lot of really important training that goes on there that's very valuable for the world of business.
And after your undergrad experience, you did what a lot of well-trained liberal arts undergrads do. You went to graduate school?
Yes, I had absolutely no idea what I was actually going to do to make a living.
And you tried out a couple different things in graduate school.
I did. I'd already started promoting concerts, and I had started working at WUOT, the public radio station, actually when I was a senior in high school.
Cool.
And I continued doing that through my period at UT. I actually took 2 years off, actually in the middle of the 70s too, and lived for a while in upstate New York and a little bit in New York City, trying to figure out what I was going to do at that particular point too. But that's correct. At one point I was fascinated by what was going on in the world of computer science, and studied that for a while, decided it wasn't for me, morphed into architecture, which definitely wasn't for me. I think my professors decided it wasn't for me when they found out that I was doing concerts on the side. Yeah. You're not supposed to do anything on the side when you're in architecture school. So.
They want your full attention. They want your full attention. So tell us about, then 1998 was your first big entrepreneurial venture. Am I getting the date straight?
88.
88. I forgot.
If you're talking about the club.
I'm talking about the club.
That's true.
Tell us about that experience.
Okay, I had, well, I started promoting concerts, as was mentioned, as a hobby, mostly because I was an announcer at WUOT, and that was back when public radio was kind of the wild frontier, and there was a certain amount of leeway in coming up with unique and individual programming, and I had a program where I played a lot of the music that was united only by the fact that I liked it. And I got to share it with people over 100,000 watts, which was a fantastic thing to be able to do when you're a music nerd in college. And through that, some bands found out that I was playing their music on the radio, and they started calling up and saying, you know, we want to come to Knoxville. Will you help put together a show? So I started doing that, again, for fun primarily. Although by time, by 81 or 82, I had started working with some artists and actually started making a little bit of money. And that was, you know, and I also found myself really drawn to that whole experience. There was something very rewarding and very exciting about working with artists and helping to put on their concerts and uniting them with an audience that appreciated what they did. And it was very addictive in a way, and it's something that I could never let go of. And throughout the 80s, you know, I was in graduate school for a while. I started working for a while in the tinsel structure business through my architecture experiences with awnings and tents and various other types of structures. And during that period, the concerts became more and more and more a part of my life. And a friend of mine who had actually been part of my inspiration for going to architecture school decided he was going to become a developer. And he had his eyes on what is now known as the Old City. At the time, there was one business in the Old City, or at least one business outside of the warehouses and all that were there, and that was a restaurant called Annie's. And he wanted to develop this building across from Annie's. And
so this is late 80s.
Well, this talk probably started around 86, 87.
So
we put together a business plan. He wanted me to do a music club, so we put together a business plan and opened a club called Ella Garou's in the Old City in the space that's now occupied by the Melting Pot. And the unofficial opening was June of 1988. The official opening was September of 88, but we did a few preliminary concerts, totally illegally, perhaps. Don't tell, Eddie.
Pay your taxes. Pay your taxes.
That was
our mantra. Pay your taxes.
The death of Ella Garou's, Eddie's story there was, you know, yeah, pay your taxes. That's all I got to say.
If you learn one thing today, pay your taxes. So talk about the Ella Garou's experience, putting together business plans, seeking capital to start the business. That's all new to you at that point.
Definitely.
So how does that work?
Well, we put together a business plan for this 250-seat club. This is, I might add, a very, very, very different environment from the music business now. But at the time, the music business was at an earlier stage. Ticket prices hadn't risen to the point that they are now, and the opportunities to attract artists, even to play a 250-seat room, were much more prevalent than they are now. Now, only the smallest, earliest developing acts are really going to play rooms of that size. But at the time, it was a very different environment. And so we put together the plan. The plan was to be a restaurant. We had actually really great food for a while. And
you were the cook?
I was not the cook.
Okay.
We won't go there.
About your cooking skills?
No.
Okay.
I have good cooking skills.
Okay. You should have been a cook.
Okay. Not for like major, not for a restaurant environment, but I can cook.
Okay, good to know.
Okay. I just wanted to put that out there. Where were we? I lost my train of thought. You had me cooking in the kitchen of my club.
You said it's a different environment. Yeah. It's a different environment for nightclubs at that point.
Right. So, you know, in all fairness, my friend who was the developer was an amateur developer. It was his first development. I was an amateur club owner. I was certainly an amateur restaurant owner. And some of the things that we were counting on didn't work. Probably the biggest problem that we had was that it was it was scaled to be a 250-seat room, but in truth, we could only seat 220 people. We could put more in there, but only if we had the tables and chairs out. So a key component of our business plan ended up flawed. On top of that, the city had imposed what became an 18.25% tax on tickets.
Eddie, that was before you, right? That was before you.
Yeah,
okay.
We can't blame Eddie for that one.
Okay.
There was a tax imposed on tickets to build the arena, to build Thompson Bowling Arena.
Go Vols!
we had been somehow lulled into thinking, we knew this was coming, but we had been lulled into thinking that it would not apply to a club of our size. It ended up applying. So I think if you can imagine, essentially 20% coming off of the top of anything that you're doing, you can recognize the problems that it would have. It was an unworkable situation in a nutshell. So.
Okay, so play that out for us. How long does that business survive?
It survived for 2.5 years. And I credit it as my graduate school in the music business. First of all, it was completely immersive. Eddie was talking about working long hours. I was seldom there later than 10 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier. I was often there till 2 in the morning. And I basically did nothing else for 2.5 years. I may have gotten away for a week or two during that period. But it was a completely all-consuming, immersive experience. During that time, I developed a lot of relationships in the music business that are still extremely important today. Some of the most important agents that I continue to work with today, I met then. Some of the artists that we do business with on a regular basis, I met then. Lyle Lovett, who's going to be at the Tennessee Theater this Saturday night. John Prine, who was just there this past Friday night. Both played Ella Garouz. There are so many examples. Yeah. But, the music business is a very relationship-based business. So, the work ethic that I developed in trying to keep that club alive and the relationships that I developed during the period of the club operating were, provided ultimately the foundation for what we've been able to accomplish today.
So you've got 2.5 years of blood, sweat, and tears wrapped up in the restaurant, the club, and then you've got to close December of some year.
Well, we went through a really tough thing.
Do you mind talking about the really painful stuff?
Yeah, I'll talk about the really painful
good.
stuff.
Thank you.
First of all, we realized that we had this 18% tax, 18.25% to be precise.
Not that you're bitter.
I'm not bitter, actually, at all. Okay. Nobody intended for this to be the results, and nobody, people often don't see what the what the impact of various decisions that are made are going to be. So no, I'm not bitter, but the way it went down was a little harsh. In that, we realized that we had this tax to pay. We had no cash flow to pay that kind of tax with, especially the back taxes. There was a dialogue going on with a couple of people in the city, and then one morning I woke up and my bank account was completely zapped. Every single dollar in the club's bank account was gone, and discovered that someone at the city had decided that enough was enough, in spite of the fact that we were in, what I thought was a series of conversations. Checks started to bounce at that particular point, and we never recovered from that. But we went into Chapter 11 for a while. We came up with a plan. It was in wrestling with the realities of what we were dealing with that we realized, this business plan doesn't work because we could not maximize the good nights to make up for the bad nights with a capacity of 250, much less 220. We moved to the Foundry at the World's Fair Park, much to the dismay of my former friend at that point, the developer. The developer and landlord. We started doing really great business at the Foundry because we were able to attract some major acts at the time, and it went to, we could put 700 or 800 people in there, and so we actually thought we might be able to cash flow our way out of it, or at least get to a point where we could attract new investment and come up with a plan. But this was at this particular point, we're at the end of 1989. U.S. forces were lined up along the border of Kuwait. Everybody was just waiting for war. And we went from having, I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but we went from having literally the biggest month in the history of the club, which by today's standards is nothing, but then it was huge. It's $250,000 that month, and thinking, we can pay our bills, we're going to get out of this. And it was like somebody flipped a switch off. I mean, it was, we went from all of that business to nothing. And not only that, but the acts quit touring, at least in the volume that we needed them to be touring. So after doing $250,000 the month of November, I found myself on December the 17th having done something like $14,000 in business. That's how dramatic it was. And we closed the club on December the 18th, and that was that.
So on December 18th, you have to announce to this team that you're closing for business, and I'm imagining that's not a joyous Christmas season you're rolling into at that point. And then something happens that kind of changes the course. You get a phone call?
Yeah. It's funny. Arguably, I probably pushed the business far beyond what a reasonable, intelligent person should have done. So by the time we actually closed it, even though it was an extremely painful thing to do, it was also something of a relief.
Right.
And I'm not one to really. I wasn't feeling particularly sorry for myself. I just didn't know what on earth I was going to do. I really felt like we'd done everything possible, and it was, beyond our control. But no, I had pushed so hard to make it a success. I didn't have a backup plan at the time. It was a week before Christmas, so I was just trying to make the best of the holiday season when I got a call from a guy named Mario Tirado, and I don't know if any of you know the club, but the club had a really, really diverse lineup of acts. So in the late 80s, people like Garth Brooks played there, Vince Gill played there, Mary Chapin Carpenter played there, Emmylou Harris played, Nancy Griffith, the Neville Brothers, but also acts like the Black Crowes and Widespread Panic. Wynton Marsalis. We had a lot of jazz. Wynton Marsalis played there on a number of occasions. And so Mario Tirado, who was Wynton's agent, called me up between Christmas and New Year's, and he said, he calls me Ashman, or he did at the time. I don't think he does that anymore. Ashman. And he's like, Ashman, Wynton, January 24th, Wynton needs a date. What can we do? And I was like, I can't do anything. I'm out of business. And he's like, January 24th, Wynton needs a date. Find us something. And I'm like, man, the club's closed. I don't have a nickel. And he's like, you don't understand. We've had a date fall out. Wynton needs a place to play. Knoxville's the place for him to play. Find us something.
Come on,
don't
Ashman.
Worry
Come on,
about
Ashman.
the money. So the don't worry about the money part, I was like, okay. So I kind of reverted back to what I was doing in the mid-1980s, and I went to the Bijou first. They couldn't do it because there was play rehearsal or something. So we ended up at the UT Music Hall. We did an outrageously high ticket price of $22.50, if I remember correctly. Completely sold out. I made a couple of $1,000, and AC Entertainment was born.
You're back in business. You're back in business. That's awesome. And
Without a daily overhead to worry about in the same way.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And the business grows from there, and is it 95 where you get involved with the Tennessee Theater? Am I getting the date straight?
Yeah, I started doing shows at the Tennessee Theater. I think the first show at the Bijou was April of 1980. And the first show at the Tennessee was just a few months after that. I don't remember if it was actually 1980 or 1981. I love historic theaters, and I love seeing concerts and events in venues like that. So we had worked presenting concerts throughout the 80s, and certainly after AC Entertainment was born in very early of 1990. Or 91, actually. I was wrong about those dates. The club closed in December of 1990, so AC Entertainment was 91. So we were active in the Tennessee Theater at the time. We were also branching out at that point all over the Southeast, so we were doing a number of shows in historic theaters in a number of other cities. But, you know, when we found an act who would work with us, and enjoyed working with us, we would try to find other opportunities for them. And I guess it was about 94, 95, we started hearing rumors that Jim Dick, who had saved the Tennessee Theater in 1980, was interested in taking the theater off of his books because he was preparing to sell his company. And he initially approached the city as well as the University of Tennessee about taking over the, he wanted to donate it to them and have them take over the operations. Both the city and UT said no. We started getting a little nervous because we loved the venue and we didn't want to see anything bad go down with it. And a meeting was set up between me and Jim Dick, and I was like, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with this, but in the interim, I actually think we could manage it and put some shows in here and at least keep it going while you figure out what your next strategy is going to be. Amazingly, he said yes, and we started. I think it was maybe May of June, or I get my dates mixed up these days. I'm getting old, but May of June of '96 or something. That we actually took over the reins of the theater, and he had been losing money every single month. He had been subsidizing it to the tune of $35,000 a month since the early 1980s. We started cash flowing it immediately. I think we were 3 or 4 months into it before the theater actually started being self-sustaining. And I like to think that at least partially was inspiring to the community that came together, and they formed a nonprofit board, started looking at ways to renovate the theater, which it needed very much. And, we continue to manage it to this day through the $25 million renovation that happened in 2004 and 2005.
Yeah, it's this amazing asset for downtown, so we're thrilled that worked out.
It is.
So you are you are a very successful independent promoter in the 90s, while the rest of the world is telling you that independent promoters are going the way of the horse and buggy.
I don't know how successful I was. I was making a living. I was not hugely successful. But we were getting out there. We were developing a lot of great relationships with artists. Making a decent living. I had formed AC Entertainment with one other person, a guy named Troy Sellers, who had worked with me at Ella Garou's and had started taking over the detail parts of the business in terms of production management, where you try to make sure that what you're telling a band is going to be there when they get there is actually there. And kind of managing the process of the day. And we had grown the company to about 4 or 5 employees by the mid-1990s. And we're starting to work with people like Bob Dylan and Willie Nelson and, some of the new up-and-coming bands, like Fish and Widespread Panic and the Dave Matthews Band and so on. So we were starting to do pretty well, but we were not overly successful. About this time, in the mid-1990s, there was a guy named Robert Sillerman who came to the table with Wall Street money. and started doing a roll-up of concert promoters. This was initially known as SFX. What he was doing was essentially buying up all the concert promoters all over the country if they had amphitheaters, outdoor amphitheaters. The idea was to put together a complete network of promoters so that they could completely control the concert business, especially on a certain level, and basically offer an artist the entire tour. So instead of working with, the old model was that artists would work with the different regional and local promoters. This model was, you want to do a Dave Matthews show, well, we're going to offer Dave 70 markets in the USA, and we're going to do all of them. Sorry, you're not involved. This became Clear Channel. He flipped it to Clear Channel after it was SFX. It's now known as Live Nation. About this time, everyone's trying to get bought, more or less. We don't have an amphitheater, so they're not really interested in us. It's funny, I heard the same story from last week in New York at a conference being told by another great concert promoter, Golden Voice, who's based in Los Angeles. And they had exactly the same experience. They're the founders of the Coachella Festival. But we have conferences in this business like everybody else. And so there's a conference in LA called CIC that's put together by this magazine called Polestar. And they have panels where they discuss all the different issues of the business. And for a while there, every single panel was about the death of the independent promoter, which meant me and a few people like me.
Is it hard to read your eulogy? I mean, is that?
It was definitely disconcerting. I mean, you're like, you've worked and built something up to a certain point, and when you find people, everyone,
the experts?
The experts are reading the future and saying you don't have one. It certainly gives you pause. Although 2 years later, I remember sitting on one of those panels myself and saying, this independent promoter is getting ready to die from overwork because the conventional wisdom didn't completely play out the way everyone thought it would. And this gets back to it being a relationship business, and it's also a very detail-oriented business. Artists have different needs. They want to be able to present the show that is important for them to present, and they often have very strong ideas about what that experience needs to be like, both for themselves and for their fans. And so it becomes a very detailed, day-to-day, relationship-based experience. And it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to take that and scale it, like your Walmart, for instance.
Right.
And that's ended up being the shortcoming of that particular vision, is the personal attention to detail was something that a lot of artists found that they were missing, and actually opened up opportunities for us instead of closing them down.
So you rock along in the 90s with a particular plan, or are you just kind of taking advantage of opportunities?
I never really had a plan.
No plan. That's your first.
No,
your first lesson to the aspiring
yeah,
entrepreneur. No
I was
plan.
inspired by Eddie.
Pay
there.
your taxes and no plan.
Yeah, no plan.
No plan.
I did have a plan, but it's not a plan in the sense of a 5-year plan. I think the plan was more instinctual, and it was about capitalizing on opportunities. And it's very difficult at that particular stage, and especially then, to know what the opportunities were going to be. In fact, we were creating a lot of them. There were, I didn't even know these terms at the time, but there were a lot of underserved markets because the music industry had changed a lot. A lot of bands when I was growing up in the 70s, going to a lot of concerts, or in the late 60s, for instance, you could go, when ZZ Top went on tour, you could go see ZZ Top at Freedom Hall in Johnson City, and they would come and play the Coliseum in Knoxville, and they would play the UTC Arena in Chattanooga. They were playing every town that had a venue to play. But by the early 1990s, they were only playing the major cities. Ticket prices were starting to go through the roof. And if you wanted to see your favorite band, you had to drive to Atlanta or maybe Nashville in many cases. And increasingly, the big promoters started to focus on the big shows, because big shows are frankly easier to do than small shows. And it left a lot of towns suddenly without this flow of tours coming through the cities, which gave us an opportunity to step in and start doing some work.
Underserved markets. If you had gone back for an MBA, you probably would have heard that term. But that's just an aside. I don't know why I thought of that. So things are...
It's not too late.
It's not. That's a good point. It's a very good question. You are first. Where's the prize?
Thank you for Bonnaroo, is the first thing I'll say.
You're welcome.
Go Bonnaroo, go Bonnaroo.
I was at the first, I was at the third, I was at the fifth, and I took my little brother to his first festival a few years ago, which my mom was really stoked about.
How old is he?
He's 22 now.
It's legal.
But it was life-changing experience. He came out of the woods, face painted, dirty. I dropped him off on the step, drove back to Asheville. So good times.
Look at that impact you're having on today's
See
youth.
the impact you have on all of our
Exactly.
lives. So my question is, obviously Bonnaroo has changed over the years, and there's been, it's interesting, the last one that I went to, going to the first and seeing it kind of evolve over the years, and then seeing MTV buy it out, and kind of the backlash from that in the musical world. And I'm sure you've spoke to this several times, but I just need to ask myself, how do you feel that has impacted music, and how do you feel that has a larger impact on smaller bands, because it's getting harder and harder for musicians to make a living in today's world with everything being online. And the MTV buyout was a really big pivotal moment for Bonnaroo, and a lot of people have stood back and said, whoa, I won't be any part of it. What do you say to that?
Good questions. Impact of Bonnaroo.
Wow, that's a big question. Maybe I should talk for a minute about how Bonnaroo came about.
That'd be great.
Because it too was a response to this consolidation, and one of the things that we faced was the concert industry was becoming very focused on the summer and very focused on playing outdoor amphitheaters, because that's there was a lot of money driving this. When you own the venue and you can sell the sponsorships and you can charge people for parking and keep the money, and when the concessions that you're selling are your concessions, then you can offer the artist something that a promoter who doesn't necessarily have access to those income streams cannot. And we tried to step up to that challenge. In fact, as early as '92, we launched a concert series at the World's Fair Park downtown. It wasn't an amphitheater. We had to bring in our stage every time and put it up and take it down. But it gave us an opportunity to do these outdoor concerts and to catch some of these artists as they were on the road between Nashville and Atlanta, and Raleigh, and I guess those were the three major amphitheater markets around us at the time. But and this really inspired me to start looking for, okay, what can we do to present artists in a different context? And there was actually a little 2-day festival. We did it down at the World's Fair Park at one point with Santana and String Cheese Incident, and I forgot who all played it in the late 1990s. And then we tried a camping festival in western North Carolina called Mountain Oasis, which was for only 6,000 people, but it was enormously successful, and with a fairly, no major acts playing it at all. And it kind of led to the idea of creating Bonnaroo. But there were a lot of precedents for this in my mind. I mean, when I grew up, I was too young to go to Woodstock, but it was there as like an iconic experience that was very influential. And I did talk my dad into taking me to see the movie, in spite of the fact that there were like naked girls in it. And I was like, I was really inspired by that. But then there were also bluegrass festivals. Doc Watson had started Merlefest in the late 1980s. But my wife's German, and I started traveling to Europe on a fairly regular basis also during the 1990s. And in Europe, the festivals had never gone away. In fact, Europe doesn't have any amphitheaters. What they do have are literally hundreds of festivals. I think the United Kingdom alone, at this particular point, has something like 350 mostly rock-oriented music festivals during the festival season. There's a gazillion of them in Europe, and we just found ourselves looking at these saying, why not here? And it was something that we could do, as opposed to building an amphitheater in a city that couldn't support one.
You have another question?
Yeah. Well, as you're talking about sort of doing these more small grassroots things and organizing those as another way to help uplift smaller musicians, do you see yourself being a part of more of a social enterprise that is more heavily involved in making sure that musicians are getting recognition, are making a living wage, can support themselves on a deeper level?
Well, I'm a fan, so that particular thing is actually very important to me, and I think festivals have definitely changed the music landscape in a really significant way. Trying to figure out where to go with this. Festivals are definitely one of the great, well, two things. First of all, I think concerts in general, but festivals in particular, are very much social experiences. So, the experience of being there with your friends, spending the weekend together, being there for, sharing a common love of music, and, sharing the music that you love with your friends and discovering new music is a huge part of what the festival experience is all about. And as the landscape for music has changed considerably, it's rare to hear new music on the radio, especially commercial radio. And that's one of the many things that's changed dramatically for my business in the past few years, well, in the past couple of decades. Back in the 1990s, people would call up and say, we're interested in bringing this band to Knoxville. What do you think? My first call would be to radio stations. Are you playing these guys? Are you planning on playing this band? We never call a radio station anymore. It doesn't matter. The musicians have so many tools at their disposal through, internet technology, but also through exposure at festival events. I know that if a band plays Bonnaroo and has an enormous impact, like Mumford & Sons did the first year that they played, that they're going to have an audience here, and it doesn't matter whether they're being played on the radio or not. So in some ways, I think festivals have maybe come to replace radio station playlists as a means for artists to get exposure to a larger audience. Does that answer your question? No? Well, that's something I try to do as an artist manager, which is something else that I do. And you know, we really value the new up-and-coming artists. I think, you know, the music industry is about constant change and constant evolution. So, you know, in many instances, the artists that are really important 10 years ago are no longer the artists that are most important now. And it's one of the most exciting things about the business. So, yes, we do feel like it's really important to discover and nurture new talent. And to the extent that we can do that, we do it, and I think all festivals do that to some degree. And you know, speaking for the Bonnaroo Partnership in particular, we all love music, and you know, we're going out to see young bands that nobody's ever heard of every night of the week in some way or another. Not literally each of us every night of the week, but you know, we've got somebody out there who is you know, going to see something that they've heard's really amazing, and sometimes those artists make it onto the festival at you know, in the cafe stages or whatever we can do to help give them a little bit more exposure if we really love what they do. But you know, there's thousands of new bands out there and a few dozen opportunities at Bonnaroo every year, so it's we can never do everything that we would like to. But supporting the new up-and-coming artists and giving them an opportunity is, I think, very healthy for our business, but it's also something that we just want to do as fans.
Cool. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know you.
Hey, back off.
Yeah, sorry about that. I know you started Metro Pulse at a very young age. It didn't begin as Metro Pulse, but what did you learn from watching the evolution of one of your first ideas turn into something big, and when in your career did you really embrace your successes to know that you were really great at it?
Metro Pulse was an accident. You know, this kind of falls into the, you know, looking for opportunities or how things sometimes play out in a way differently than you expect. Metro Pulse.
You started the Metro Pulse?
Yeah. Mostly we were looking for a way to get information out about the shows that we were doing. And even though, you know, people like Wayne Bledsoe, you know, really great, there was a limit to what they could do, and we were wanting to do more shows than it was reasonable to expect the News Sentinel, for instance, to write about. So one of the most successful aspects of Ella Garou's have been a little newsletter that we put out, which we mailed to everybody, and we could essentially write what we felt like people needed to know to get them excited about some of the artists that we were bringing to town. And that was the real impulse behind Metro Pulse, was, you know, how can we have a forum, a platform to share information maybe about some of these artists who are lesser known than some of the artists that we're bringing to town that we can advertise on the radio. And you know, I partnered with a guy named Rand Pearson on this. I didn't really partner, but I hired Rand to start this. Rand had different ideas. You know, Rand wanted to write about politics and you know, other things that were going on in the community, and he really took the ball and ran with it. He did an amazing job. And if there were a lot, you know, Ian Blackburn, who still works for me, you know, started out, he did all of the layout and the design. And, you know, there was a team of people there. But I had the idea, but I can't really take credit for what Metro Pulse became.
Cool.
And fortunately, Joe Sullivan stepped in at a really key time and wanted to take it up another level, and also wanted to give me my exit strategy, which I was delighted to take.
Thank you. Oh, we've got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Question of interest of mine is the work-life balance for entrepreneurs, how to manage the ups and downs and of time and success with personal life, specifically relationships. Can you talk a bit about how your life has evolved in that area?
Work-life balance, sir.
That is the trick, isn't it? And mine's maybe even, it's either easier or more difficult than others, depending on how you look at it, because I would actually be doing a lot of what I'm doing as a hobby if it wasn't work. So it, you know, when I go on vacations, a lot of times I want to go to a show, you know, or I, you know, want to meet with people in the business and everything. So, you know, my wife always struggles with trying to find places that we can go that I'm not going to be able to do any work. And, you know, but I
I'm trying to think of where those locations would be, but go ahead.
well, she thought Brazil, and she ended up being wrong. Not to my doing, but yeah, that was just this past summer. But I think it is important to maintain a balance and to, you know, have other interests and, you know, pay attention to friends. You know, I love to cook. I love to read. I love to go hiking. I love to bicycle. You know, so, you know, all of those things are important, and I'm both fortunate and slightly cursed by the fact that music is both a passion and my work.
Yeah, cool.
And you know, it can be a little hard to manage at times, but you know, I think it beats the alternative.
Yes, it sure does.
No one feels sorry for me for being overloaded with concerts and music.
No,
actually.
including me. Alex Lavage, last question. Bring it home, brother.
Thanks for the introduction. Ashley, thank you again so much for your wisdom and advice.
Well, thanks
here.
for having me. It's great.
My quick question is, what, with Knoxville and the surrounding region being roughly within 1 day's driving distance of 70% of the country's population, do you think we are reaching our potential as a region, holding ongoing not only concerts but conferences and events for a variety of different communities here? And if not, or even if we are, what are some things that we can be doing to improve that volume of activity to not only bring our own communities together but also to improve economic development?
Thank you.
You're going to get me in trouble here, I'm afraid.
That's it. That's what he does.
Did my mic go off?
No, it's still
Okay.
on.
I think there's enormous amount of potential here in Tennessee in general, and especially here in East Tennessee. It's been really thrilling to see what's happened here in downtown Knoxville in just the last few years as it continues to evolve in a really organic way. And it's you know, as a friend of mine said not too long ago, he's like, you know, it used to be people would come visit and I had to explain to them why I lived here. And, you know, now they start asking if I know any good real estate agents. So, you know, I think, you know, at its own pace and in its own way, Knoxville in particular is really establishing itself as the fantastic place to live that it is. And I think, you know, we've got a lot of great infrastructure in this town to capitalize on. You know, we did an event here for 2 years in a row that we're going to bring back called Big Ears, which was a downtown festival that utilized all the venues. You know, the Tennessee Theater, the Bijou Theater, the Square Room, Market Square, the Knoxville Museum of Art. You've got the World's Fair Park. You've got the Convention Center, all of which you walk from the farthest 2 points, or, you know, maybe a 15, maybe 20-minute walk. I think that's a hugely valuable asset for this community in trying to stage any kind of conference or event or gathering or festival, because the key to me is having people together with that sense of shared purpose. And, you know, it's always interesting. I spent a lot of time in New York, and I just got back last week, and it's always interesting to see how much of a struggle it is to create that kind of environment in a city like New York, because there's just so much distraction, and it's hard to get that kind of center of gravity where that commonality of being together for that shared purpose is really felt. Instead, everybody's like, you know, trying to go shopping or go to, you know, some, you know, whatever the latest 24 cool restaurants are or whatever. But, I think there's a lot of potential for that here. I think, to be bluntly honest, the number one challenge that, there's two challenges really, and they're probably not unrelated. One of them is a more broad-based challenge, and for Knoxville, one of them is just really fundamental, in my opinion. The more broad-based thing is education. I think we really need to pursue these educational initiatives to turn up the heat here in Tennessee. I think it's very important for what everyone in this room is gathered together for. We need a more knowledgeable and trained work staff from here in our state in order to meet the challenges that face us in the future. And then this is maybe just a real personal thing, but the airport. We need better access to the rest of the world. And one of the biggest challenges, for instance, to doing a major event in this city on like the festival concept is just how expensive it is for people to get here. And when I'm going online and it's like same time out, I've got the choice between paying $500 for a flight to New York from Knoxville, or I have to drive to Nashville where I can pay $212. That's really, really, really not good for business, in my opinion.
Awesome. Ashley Capps, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me. Did we talk about everything?
Sean, you need us to clear out, brother?